Our minds are so powerful that what we focus on reverberates through every aspect of our lives. So why not see what happens when we put our attention on all the good things people are doing? Join me for the good with Teresa G as we start a ripple effect by focusing on all the greatness in the world. Kene Sperry is the owner and photographer for Eye in the Sky Photography. His captures in nature grab my attention because of the contrast. The contrast is spellbinding. Then you add in Kene's vocal interpretations of his photography, which encompasses such a depth of soul and healing that I had to introduce him to all of you guys. I'm so excited you're here, Kene. This has just it's been fascinating how I've just wanted to have this conversation with you, and all sorts of things that have happened to sort of like have us postpone and all these things. But here we are today. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Teresa, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the container of presence.
It's sort of, we have quite the background actually, because Kene was our wedding photographer at 20 years. We're coming up on 20 years ago. I remember we couldn't afford a photographer. So that was one of your first weddings, I think you took photos of, right?
I think that was like number 2 wedding of my career, and then it ended up being through my whole career. I think I ended up shooting over 300 plus weddings, which gave me the opportunity to really, face all different lighting situations, all different scenarios with people and dynamics, and basically the palette of anything goes. And so that really taught me to really be in the moment. Not taught me, but reminded me that all exists is beautiful, and there's no such thing as a perfect photograph, but there is a perfect moment. And so that's when I started getting fascinated with the moments and the light. And I now with weddings, I don't really shoot them other than if something really resonates and it was meant to be, I will. But now my focus is on taking that knowing and taking that into the fine art world, and with photographing space and light and the connection to our human heart.
Well, yeah, I mean, now you're a big wig, and in the photography, like his photography. So I can't wait. We'll put up some of his photography for you. But I would say that I was on like some social media thing, and Kene was, I'll go back to our history, but I just want to let you guys know this. So Kene was doing a talk about black and white, about his black and white photography and nature. And what happened is I just basically was completely, I'll put the link up for this talk he did, but his words and the visuals were like poetry with these wonderful visuals and quite outstanding. And so where do you think that you got that, where you can also take these amazing pictures and then create the photography or create the poetry that is somewhat of a spiritual experience for the people watching you and listening to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the way when I photographed people traveling around the world, photographing these, it turned out being kind of these big weddings, from like kind of big political or big celebrity weddings, or kind of big events, right? Where everybody would, kind of arrive at the location, whether it be in Italy or Manhattan or, in the Sonoma wine country in California. I would show up, and I was able to just kind of be this observer. And then what I came to terms with is like, wow, we are just fascinating human beings. We are truly just, I put myself in the role of just being the observer and not judging and not placing, these constructs on people. And truly the work just came alive because I was just seeing things as they were, rather than my interpretation and, indoctrination of what I was told they were. And that was really fascinating for me to move into. And then what I, from wedding to wedding, I was traveling around and I was getting all these big shoots. I was getting all these accolades, and the business was just flowing out. And one event would turn into another shoot, and I travel here. And what I found in my one night, I was walking through in Portland, Oregon, on a late night, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks of this massive grief and sadness. And what I realized is I had been hiding from myself the intimacy, which is into me, I see, of my true yearning was to be seen. And I was not fully seeing myself. I was somewhat working through the accolades and all the different validations from the external, and I wasn't really showing my heart and my vulnerability and my authenticity. Which what I realized, Teresa, was that to me is the real pandemic. Is there is a deep fear of intimacy within males in our society, in our world, because we were never really taught or created a container to really feel the expression, to feel the rage, to feel the sadness, to feel the actual joy. And that's when I started doing some deep work on myself for like 3 to 5 years. And through that process, manifested I put my primal energy, this creative force, into my work in a real personal level. It wasn't no I no longer was working for a client, a commercial client, a wedding, a big production. I started to go inward, and I wasn't working for anybody other than I had a message to deliver that was from source, from something higher, from just the egoic mind of me. And that's where the work just started coming alive. It actually started coming to me. I was actually not forcing anything. I was just moving more and more into my power. And the way I moved into power was, and it's a continued process. It's not like an end game of evolution, but was to really be vulnerable with myself and be raw with myself and let myself kind of go there, which was new. It's kind of like had to reprogram myself to go there. And I'm still see myself being programmed and on autopilot. And then I have to kind of go back. So when I go into a shoot now, I do a meditation, kind of some breathing, and I kind of tap into the energy of everything and kind of move out of my mind. And then what I find is everything just kind of is shown to me, and it's shown to me to give to the viewers, resonate with something with them. Because my biggest intention with my work is to ignite the human heart and remembering that we are not separate to nature, but one with nature.
I love that. There's just so many things there that I want to dive deeper into. And the first one is the intimacy thing. I love that, into me. I see. Is that what you said?
Mm. Yeah.
And I agree that it's a male's, it is a sort of I agree that it is a pandemic, but I would say that it's, maybe, all, males and females are experiencing that,
Oh yeah.
but I can see that as, with males, it might be more of a prominent thing.
Hmm.
So this process of delving deep and sort of the sadness and going into that, what did that look like?
Well, it when I first started going through it, I actually didn't really have access to my deep, deep sadness, to the grieving. So I actually was had a lot of rage and a lot of anger, and I worked with some different people in kind of the energy world, because the talking and the counseling wasn't really doing it for me. The words, I needed something deeper, so I started to kind of seek out people and seek out knowledge. And so what I found is I found this kind of anger I had, and behind the anger was this deep sadness. I worked with this one woman who was kind of working with my body, and she had me kind of working through the anger and the rage, and I was clenching my fist and moving the energy. And then she got me, helped me get me to a point of full maximum, because the reason why I was so afraid to really let my rage out is because in society it's kind of suppressed as soon as a person, or particularly males, like have this kind of anger, this rage that needs to be released, and it doesn't have to be projected on others. It's their own, take responsibility. It's their energy. And when I released it, behind it was the deepest sadness. I went down into a kind of fetal position like a baby, and I'd never cried like that probably until I was 2 years, 1 or 2 years old. Was maybe the last time I had tears like that. And they just kind of, there were these big tears that came out of my eyes, and I felt so much lighter. And after that was kind of a trajectory shift into the, I was now aware of and more connected to me and my, and I wasn't putting blame or shame on anybody else for my energy. I at that point I took a trajectory shift to own everything that's happened to me and everything that is happening to me, and that put me into a true power position. Not what we were told or sold in society of being power, to be dominant and somehow kind of forceful. There's power and force are the complete opposite. And so I still work through that process because it's an ongoing thing. But with those tears that I accessed, I was able to get softer and lighter and more open to my creativity, which now I believe can be felt through the work. There's something deeper there.
Well, congratulations for doing that work. And I absolutely agree with you. I sometimes wonder, I think women and men handle the whole experience differently, but I think we're all sort of going through that. And I also, for, my listeners that are doing the rewiring process, I honestly do believe illness comes sort of from the same place where you sometimes where we're not really, we're unattached from our spiritual self, or the depths of what's going on in life and experiencing the real emotions. At least that's how it's been for me.
Hmm.
So have you always felt as though photography, you were a vessel, you are a vessel when you're taking pictures, or was that sort of awakened in you after that experience?
I've always felt like I was a vessel through my visual experience. I was able to photograph and create these visual expressions, which was a reminder of how deep of love everybody has in their heart. So I always knew that. The difference was it was working great. Like it was, people were feeling the work. There was something deeper than just, oh, that's a pretty photograph. Oh, that looks nice. There was something resonating there where I really jumped kind of my own limiting beliefs and really expanded was when I entered into my own intimacy, my own depth. And I'd always kind of been playing on the fringes, but to just be fully humbled and then realize that my pain is our pain, and I could feel, and I was able to kind of feel this, like, really on a level of this, like, kind of deep trauma and deep pain we've all been suppressed to. And it's actually not even who we are. It's like we're in a deep hypnosis of separation, and that we're not enough, and what we're not worthy of love. And so we may ask ourselves, how do we even get there? Because we are love and we are the light. It's because there's this dark energy, and I photograph it with my with my visuals. There's the darkness is part of us. So we sit there and we say, oh, it's this political figure, or it's this party, or it's that person, or if it wasn't for this, then I wouldn't feel that. It's in our deep psyche, and it's in a collective. So what do we need to do? We need to reveal it so we can heal it. And so we need to look at the darkness, and that's an invitation to kind of look at your own shadow and shine some light on it, because your heart has all the light, and you are the light. So, but if we continue to just ignore and think that there's, it's all love and light, and there's no darkness, well, we're kind of, that term, spiritually bypassing a part of us, which is, so if you look at some of the work, it's like these deep blacks, and then there'll be like this bright white, and the eye always wants to go to the brightest spot. So if you look at any of the body of work and squint your eyes, like you're going kind of blind, and you can't really make out what it is. Notice where your eye goes. Your eye will go to the light. So I think it's just kind of this awareness for us all, for the invitation now. We're all being invited to reveal the kind of collective and internal shadow, and then trust ourselves to make decisions, trust ourselves to make the next step. And there's no answer outside of you. Just go inward, and that will always be, your intuitive answer. It will always be the truth. And so, yeah, we've never been in a time where so many people are feeling the effects. It's always been there, but now it's come out of the surface and can't be ignored. And so it's really the most beautiful time to be alive is right now.
So is this the root of what inspires you to capture in black and white? Or when did you start taking photos in black and white?
Well, I started taking photographs. I had a dark room, and I was printing black and white pieces in Missoula at age 22, 21, 22. And so I've always studied the monochromatic tonalities of just light. So what happens with the monochromatic, just the gray tones and the white and the black, is now we're just working with light. We're not working with color. And so I'm drawn to that because it brings in, color is beautiful. Color actually has all these different emotional responses to all different people. Like I may see red and see something and feel something totally different than what you may feel when you see red. And so I wanted to kind of bring it just into the pure essence of light for the remembering of something within. So yeah, I've always been drawn to black and white. And so yeah, now the body of work is all black and white, and all the shades of gray between.
Wow. So what an evolution this journey has gone. You know, your journey has gone on with it first just looking at the black and white and the light, and then taking it to a whole spiritual level of understanding or perception.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like what came first, and I just think it's all interconnected, and so it's kind of this even what I speak of the if I was to say the root of suffering in one sentence is the root of suffering is the hypnosis that we're separate. So nothing's separate, and there in my perspective there is no beginning or end. It's all just a continuous flow of the now. And there's been a lot of philosophers and a lot of teachers and a lot of artists and a lot of mothers and fathers and community members speak of this. And I think because we all know in our deepest gut that we all yearn to feel connected. We all yearn to feel seen, and we all yearn to be heard, and ultimately we all yearn to be loved.
And I really appreciate how you are able to capture wildlife and nature and bring up this discussion. And it reiterates the idea that we're all connected. So when you're capturing wildlife and nature and you're able to integrate these ideas of black and white, has that always been a passion of yours to do that with the nature and animals? Or is that a newer adventure?
I've always been connected to nature, and what I found through photographing nature is what kind of drew me in was the way that animals migrate, and they actually kind of breathe together and move together without actually the way the elk will move up the hill in the pack of like 3 to 500. They're actually the one at the end and the one at the bottom are communicating, and they're actually moving in a kind of a fluid flow, just like was noticing how the river flows, and it's without strain. It's always with the least resistance. And so I was like, wow, that's who we are. You know, we actually we've just been programmed to think we need to resist. The egoic mind wants to force, and actually, if we break all those barriers down, we are these animals that actually want to cohesively move together and be as one. I mean, and so yeah, I think what happened is I was photographing the landscapes and the way the rivers flow, and seeing these patterns with the way the river bends and the way the snow melts is actually the same as the way our veins move through our body. If you look down at at some of your veins and the way they move, they actually have parallels to the way the river and the way the snow melts and brings out the earth. And so it really was encompassing this, like, instead of all these words, it was just this kind of like, when people look at the work, it's this knowing that I am not separate from source. I am not separate from life. I am life. I am nature. And so, you know, these animals in Yellowstone National Park, where I photograph mostly, are just reminders of that. And there's one piece in particular, if you wanted to kind of show it after the podcast, is this piece called Life 7. And it's what I was just speaking of, the way this river has flown and eroded, and the way the snow is melting is a complete parallel of the human blood vessel pumping through our veins, of this heartbeat, this life, this energy that's constantly going. So these photographs and these pieces, really just without saying anything, remind us that we're connected, all connected.
See, guys, this is why we have him on. I mean, this is amazing. And it all makes sense to me. So, as a lover of nature, I'd never looked at these analogies or thought about it this way, but it all completely makes sense. And I just love hearing you talk about it. Another interesting and cool thing I love when you talk about how you always take pictures in transitions in nature.
Hmm.
Can you sort of talk to let everyone know or talk to us about that? Because I just love when you talk about that.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. You know, it's interesting because kind of the initial fear of like a transition, a change, a shift is, oh, fight, flight, or freeze. Oh, I don't want to transition. I don't want to move. I don't want to shift. And but what I found through with my camera and just being the observer is all the beauty is in the transitions. All like there's beauty at every moment, of course, but when things are shifting, from the storm and the dark and the rain and the mud and the snow and the wind, and everything's moving around and the animals are kind of hunkering down, well, the light is just magnifying through like a magnified tool through the darkest hole, and creating this dynamic light that, to me, I keep on going back to it when I kind of close my eyes at night. It just moves into this like infinite space. And so what I found with the storms and the transitions is yeah, I really like when I like to move into the work. So if it's like a blue sky kind of calm day, it's pretty. Everybody's walking outside, walking their dog, the kids are out, it's beautiful, the very calming. But I find with the pieces that resonate the most is when the storm is coming and going. And the in between is where we feel it. So there's a piece, Emergence One, that kind of speaks of this, where I'm shooting down, and there's this body of mass of land, and maybe you can show this piece. It's moving out of the water. It's kind of like, and then there's a sun reflection. It just, the storm had just moved in and out, and there was this kind of piercing light on this massive land, and it actually kind of, to me, reflects the body, the material world of the manifestation. And if you look at it, it's very organic and feminine and soft, the way the arm moves out to the island, and the way the star or the sun reflects off this dark water. And I call this piece the Emergence One, and it's the way we're kind of moving. We're always moving into something new. It's always a evolution. Even from when we started this conversation, we have shifted, and we're evolving, and we're expanding. And so it's the work I want to remind is there's no doom and gloom. Everything is actually perfectly orchestrated. And this emergence of something new is, it's hard to see it because we've never seen it. We've never felt it, right? So if we try to reflect back on, oh, this is what it felt like back then, well, that's another construct, another trap. This is something new. And so as we continue to move into this new way of being, kind of looking at ourselves and looking at the collective society, we need to know that we actually don't know what it's going to look like, but we have to trust more of, we are continuing to expand. So we have to trust that it's happening for us and not to us. And so the Emergence series is just kind of beginning, because that was manifested from kind of this collective kind of fear-based message or narrative, which is not true at all. I mean, there's no fear. We are love, and there's no division. We are unity, and there's no scarcity. We are abundance. So it's kind of flipping the script. Let's move into love, unity, and abundance, and move kind of away from this deep hypnosis of fear, separation, division, and scarcity, because it's not who we are. It's just a program in our mind. And so I choose, even as hard as it is. I mean, the reason how I can choose is I've seen and felt this energy. It's a real energy. It's like a parasite. It's trying to extract it's trying to extract the heart, that we're divided and we're separate. I choose to see it, not ignore it. And I choose to not be part of any of this narrative, this whole mainstream narrative that's built on those three pillars of fear, division, and scarcity. I will not be part of it, even if I'm the only one. So I'm not waiting for anybody to come along with me. I'm doing it on my own, and it has not been easy. Teresa, it has not been easy, even amongst my own family and friends. And it seems to be like really self-centered, self-righteous, but my heart is like, I can't be part of this narrative anymore. And it's been lifetimes and lifetimes. This is not something new that just came about through the new narrative. It's just amplifying that we are being reminded that there's nothing outside of you that's going to give you the answer. So there's not more data, more sources. You are the source. You are the data. Follow that. And here's the hardest part, because it's all built on shame and guilt. You have to move past shame and guilt, and you have to move on your own, even if you look behind and nobody's following. Because eventually, if you move, another will be inspired to, hey, I'm going to move. And there's no doctrine. There's no way. It's just following your heart. Yeah, so here we are at a point where you can't continue to pretend like it's just going to go away if you keep on doing the thing you have to do to make other people feel safe. Your job is not to make anyone feel safe. Your job is to feel the safety with your own egoic self, follow your heart, know that you're whole and complete. And with that safety and knowing, you are healing others around you. But your job is not to be put into shame and guilt, like, I need to do this for my daughter, I need to do this for my grandma, I need to do this for others. That's where that is the energy. It's trying to trap you into thinking something else outside of you. And it's very, very high level psychosis, hypnosis.
I think all of this is just so important with everything in life. So the idea, like not even going into like politics or anything, the
Yeah.
idea that the answer is within ourselves. So
Mm.
a part of my community that listens to this show has done rewiring. It's called where we rewire our brains for health. So the biggest concept about that is that most people come in and we've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars looking outside of ourselves to heal. And, for good reason, because your body's shutting down and you want to talk to a doctor. You want to get a doctor's insight. Your body's not working. And of course, there's no judgment there at all. And so these long, long journeys of looking outside of ourselves, right? And then all of a sudden we're directed to actually rewiring our brains by ourselves, doing this by ourselves, for ourselves. And it has consistently brought such amazing healing results. So I think that's like to compare what
Mm.
you're
Mhm.
saying to that, it's like universal that the answers are when I hear you say that, to me, it just is like intuitively, I think, yes, the answers are always within ourselves. And that, healing myself from really chronic illness, terrible, terrible illness. I learned that completely because I'd been looking outside of myself for so long.
Mm.
And I'd been giving the power of all these things, affecting me and being super sensitive to all these things and just essentially giving the power outside of myself. And as soon as I took my power back, everything sort of changed around me. So, and a part of that is looking at, do I do this for myself every day now? It's more of like, am I doing this for myself or am I doing this because I feel obligated or that I should? Because that pathway
Mm. Mhm.
is scientifically proven now. And I just recorded a podcast with a naturopathic doctor who was talking about the pathway of doing for others and disregarding what you need is a pathway to illness.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Well, it's always happening for you, right? So it's like you're going, the universe, whatever source or whatever term you want to call it, is always happening for you. So even when you were speaking of this illnesses or these, with your body, that you were going through, it was always for you to circle back. So yeah, if you kind of go outside yourself and you're like, oh, I'll do this for the other, you're actually going away from your connection to source, which is kind of interesting because in society it can be as like, well, they're being very selfish. But you know what, I like to use the analogy, what do they say when you're, going to go down in a plane, right? You're going to take your oxygen mask, you're going to get fully centered, and then you're going to be able to help others. But if you immediately go into, like, you're going to give your child oxygen mask and you're kind of like barely have enough oxygen to go, well, you're of no service to anybody. So it's always like wrapping back around of like, source yourself so you can get that bridge that was broken to that kind of divine source energy, whatever, it's more esoteric, it's not based on a religion, but this kind of truth of knowing, like, this is beyond myself, this is something deeper, and then you can actually be of service to other. But if you're kind of barely holding on and getting by, and you're like, I'm just going to do this for her and him and them, and yeah, it's the universe will give it right back to you. They'll give you pain, or I mean, the universe will give you something where you're like, wait, how did I manifest more pain? It's interesting.
And it is interesting because a lot of the things you've talked about this whole time, I'm like, it's analogies for a lot of what the human journey is, right? So it's like
Hmm.
everyone has, it might show up in different ways for everyone, but I think there's a theme. And when you were saying that, the true epidemic is not being connected to source, is that how you said it?
Yeah. Hmm.
I would have to say that illness, I never need to experience illness again to advance spiritually or emotionally. I constantly tell the universe that. But it did take, that was my process of just letting go of all,
Hmm.
like going down. It made me face myself in a way that I'd never faced myself. And it sort of brought me back to the root of my essence, right? So, because when you
Hmm.
can't move or you can't walk and you can't, nothing, you can't do anything that other people are doing on the daily,
Hmm.
you're going within.
Hmm. Right.
So, I want to talk to you about this idea of healing. And we've talked about it before, the healing of humanity. And you talk about three things that you believe is part of the healing process. You remember us talking about that?
Yeah, I feel like the pillars or the foundation of that healing is done through. I mean, there's so many. When I say these three pillars is uh is done through multifaceted, right? It's multidimensional. It's infinite. But I feel like the pillars are this heart, art, and nature. So getting connected to those three. The heart is really that, really feeling everything that's arising and not trying to suppress it, feel it, see it, name it, however you want to, do it, and then let it go. And it will come and go and come and go and come and go. I mean, that's why you're here, to have this human being experience. And through the art, I even think like art has kind of been constructed as like, oh, you're such an artist. Well, actually, the way I see every single person is this living expression of art. And every single person has a different way of expressing that art, through words, through poetry, through expression of dance and movement. It may just be the way somebody moves. You're like, wow, I feel that authenticity. I feel that expression. It's one of a kind, through painting, through music, through, I mean, there is no end to art. That's so it's like, and it's actually the younger, whatever, we can kind of like open up the palette of the art and let kids and let people kind of express them without being judged. And that's the big one, is the judgment is so deep, density is so deep, but we're moving out of that. So it's going to be easier for people to kind of be an expression of living art. And then nature, and then I go into the nature because nature is who we are. We're not separate from nature. And so the more time you can get exposed to just being in nature, you can move into that stillness and silence and hear the creek and hear the birds and even just hear the silence. And that's not something that is taught. It's like a remembering, and it's challenging in the world we live in that's being faced with such a grab on attention, because it's really, the currency is attention, right? So if we were to think about currency would be, what is the greatest currency? Would be attention, awareness. I mean, we could sit around and we could put attention and awareness on a plant, and a plant will grow larger than if we were not there. So I mean, that's been studied in, all different elements. So what are we faced with right now is kind of this like superficial kind of AI, almost transhumanism type of like grabbing the attention, that's based on kind of this really end game of endless kind of like, I'm not enough. It's being programmed in the mind. I need to continue to purchase or buy or be like somebody else. And it's at an all-time high, because it's, you got 7-year-olds with these, devices, and they're just being like pushed into this algorithm of this, indoctrination. When I speak of this, it's not a fear standpoint, but like, let's look at it. Let's
Yeah,
not ignore it,
an awareness, right?
Yeah.
Let's be
Yeah.
aware and
And
awake.
it's part of our consciousness. Like, it's not separate. It's not like, oh yeah, remove all this. But who's in charge? Is it the soul or the ego? Because the ego will do anything it can to just more, 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 more. And so I feel, yeah, I feel like our greatest gift we can give is our full presence, our full attention, our full awareness to yourself and other. And so I photograph this series called Significant Other. And the baseline of it is that we're always in relation. We're always in relation. We're always in relation to self and other. And that other may be another person, that other may be a tree, that other may be a bird. We're kind of always in this dynamic of other. So the significant other is a series of two in nature that reminds the heart that we're in relation always, right now and through every moment that continues.
Well, I can't wait for you guys to see these series that he's talking about. We will post them, and we will also do some sound bites that are connected to the pictures and put them on social media so you can get this whole experience, because as you can tell, it's pretty phenomenal. So every time we have anyone on, I ask them this question. Keen, what is something you do every day that helps you be your very best self?
Yeah, and that's been. I used to think it was something I had to do. I used to think it had something to do with like the way going outside or meditating or doing some type of yoga or drinking some type of green juice or whatever to kind of really ignite. But I feel like now I'll start my day, I'll just lay there in bed and I'll just love that part of me that is whatever is arising within me to really see it and really feel it. And so that's kind of like a daily kind of like recalibration to just love what arises and love this part of me that is somewhat trying to hide. And so whatever is happening, I've actually just allowed myself to just be instead of do. So I've kind of eliminated all kind of like doing, or I'm supposed to be doing, and what's happened from me being more of a being, just sitting and looking out the window for an hour, is then actually the doing becomes a little bit more fluid, and it just kind of comes to me, and I find myself not really working, but just kind of like being one with life. And so it's, I don't know if that really describes it in a simple way, or but it's kind of abstract. I feel like I'm getting more and more abstract with my way. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm actually just moving it more and more into the being.
I love that so much, because it's just, that's where we all need to maybe go back to at least a few times a day, is just simply being. And so many teachers have said that over history. So I love that. And I just wanted to leave you guys with part of Keen's statement from his website about his photography subjects. The subject isn't the skier, the mountain, the bison, or a recognizable landscape, but the emotional connection the viewer feels as an observer. Whether that be a sense of freedom, of longing, of anger, or of love, the subject is you looking inward. Thank you so much for being here, Keen.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, it was amazing.
I love
Some
it.
real downloads, some real clarity, and yeah, I'd love to, if anybody wants to reach out and send an email. After looking at the work is just on the website, just Kene Sperry, KeneSperry.com. I'd love to hear from you.
And you're on Instagram, right?
Yep, same thing, just Kene Sperry.
Well, that was such a gift, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate just sitting down soul to soul with you, Keen. And you're always welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much.
I'm Teresa Gabrielle, and you've been listening to The Good with Teresa G. You can follow The Good with Teresa G on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you haven't yet, go to the Apple Podcast and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another inspiring conversation. Thank you for listening.